roll. I'm off. I coach Tuesday morning, so I come into this thing all hot and fired up. All right, guys. So we're gonna everything overhead today. We're just gonna dig into that. If you got, I was a little late on posting the articles, and there's also a video. So if you didn't get to those, don't stress it. I do recommend definitely watching the video. The videos, it's Sage Bergner. She's teaching the split jerk. She does a really cool lines on the floor to measure out the distance of the landing for the split. I'm going to get into, if you want to do that, great. But like if you're also just teaching class, you're not going to go draw lines for 15 people on the floor and you'll give your gym owner a heart attack as probably on top of it. So we'll talk about just finding that position without doing that. But I thought it was just a really good basic video on position, weight distribution, things like that. So if you go through any of that stuff, I would watch that one. But we'll start simple and then we're going to progress into everything. Shoulder press. Doesn't get more simple than this. Not going to spend a ton of time on it. One of you guys give me a point of performance. What do we want to see in shoulder press? Like if you're going to teach class, what's the first thing you do?
Stance and grip.
Stance and grip. Yep, love it. All of you guys were kind of there just now. Feet under the hips, hands outside the shoulders, right? We don't want hands contacting the shoulders. And then if you're going to coach me, what do I do with my elbows? What is your statement?
Slightly in front of the bar.
Yeah, so we know that barbell is racked on the shoulders. This has been, I think, one of the hardest things, one of the simplest, but one of the hardest things to get people to do. Because one, it's a little uncomfortable, right? You got a full grip on the bar, you got to get the elbows forward, and people don't like to be uncomfortable. We seek comfort, so everyone's elbows immediately drop back, especially after rep one. This position in the shoulder press, right now, me and Hannah are coaching our Olympic weightlifting class, and we just had this conversation the other day. We're not allowing our class to progress at a quick rate until they get some simple shit down. Because we agree that if we allow them to progress into a split jerk, into a push jerk, and they simply cannot get the bar racked on the shoulders well, what are we doing? Right? We're going to be so ineffective on that. So like when we're teaching the shoulder press, it's such a good opportunity to obviously get your athlete moving well, but it's and just like really any of our movements, it's an opportunity to stage them for those really heavy loads later on that we've got to get right. You guys are spot on with stance grips and elbows. What could you add to that? Like let's say we had a heavy day and you had 5x5 shoulder press, and that was all you were doing, and you need to teach more. What could you add to that rack position? How do we make that even better?
Active shoulders.
Yeah, explain that to me. Like, what are you gonna say?
So I would tell them to kind of lift their shoulders into the bar.
Shrug into the bar. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. That'll give them a bigger rack to be on. There's one more piece to that I need now. We already kind of said it with the elbows. What am I going to drive the elbows and do?
They go outside.
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
So a really good racked position for pressing, right? Elbows are slightly in front. That's simple textbook CrossFit verbiage. If I want to get even better and become more of an Olympic weightlifting specialist, I'm going to actually make sure the elbows stay in front, but I'm going to push them down and out. So they're still in front of the barbell, but they're in this position that I've got tension everywhere. By pushing them out will help engage the lats. If I engage the lats more, I've got less of a chance of a fishing rod or a dip, right? And now I'm in this really efficient pressing position versus if I am racked up here, I've got to drop and then press. Versus if everything's in position, whether I dip and drive or I'm just doing a push press, I am ready to go overhead. So take the time. It's rudimentary, it's simple, but notice next time you guys have push press, shoulder press, any press, take the time and rack people and walk around the room and actually get them into position. What I will say is you are probably going to have to get really visual you're probably going to also have to tactile move the elbows around, right? Don't be afraid to do that for that. And you're probably going to have to do it again and again and again, right? Until they really get it down. So there's our start, right? In the press, I'm not going to make you guys go through all that, right? Everything's rigid from the neck down. Abs are slightly tucked in, butt squeeze, quads are flexed. So I'm getting all of that tension going. Why? For a shoulder press. Let's think about this. And it is going to translate into our more dynamic stuff. So if somebody goes, why do I got to squeeze my butt? Why do I got to make my belly tight?
Because you want to have a strong base.
Yeah. Simply put, if I've got any softness from the neck down and I am trying to drive into the bar, I am going to lose energy down through my body. Unless I'm super rigid from the neck down, and that's abs, legs, all of that stuff. So besides leaning back and hyperextending and compromising the spine, I will become less efficient if I am soft, right? Head tucks back, bar goes straight up. I always tell people, imagine you're going to graze your chin. It seems to work pretty good. When that head tucks back and they go to press, what do you need to look for? Two big things.
When they're on the way up.
The bar path,
Bar path's one,
shoulders.
right? And specifically when that head goes back. What's another thing that maybe really
That they're
common?
not like leaning back entirely, that
Yes.
they're just moving their head.
That's a big one that I think if you're not like actively looking for, it kind of just slips through the crack. Especially because for me, I immediately look what Issa was saying. I immediately look bar path. I want to make sure that thing's not going around the face. Ton of people are going to go around the face, even if they move their neck back and forth. Easy correction. I just go stand there with my PVC pipe. I go right to a tactile cue. Never has failed me ever. So I just let's hit it with the one I know that's going to work. And yeah, making sure they don't lean. A lot of people don't move their chin like that stinky sock in the face, like that nasty face no one wants us to make on camera while we're recording a Zoom call like I just did.
The double chin.
Right? Yeah, and they don't go double chin and they lean backwards to get the head out of the way. If I've leaned backwards, I've hyperextended my spine. Now I'm putting weight overhead and I'm compromising that compression, all of that stuff. So looking bar path, looking to make sure people don't lean, right? They press, they get it overhead. Now what am I looking for?
That once they come overhead, they bring their head back.
Yeah, what's that a part of?
Oh shit.
This is I'll get a little trickier. Issa, this is your jam right here because you already kind of said it.
Sorry, I'm multitasking. Can you repeat it?
It's okay. When the bar's overhead, what are we looking for?
The shoulders being active.
That's one.
And where it is positioned over the
where it is. Yeah, so that goes right along with your bar path, right?
Mhm.
Someone's bar path could start amazing, right? And they go to take off and that thing's straight up and then oh shit, my shoulders are a little tight, so I can't get them open and they stay out in front here, right? And I've got this shoulder closure happening. So I'm going to look for stuff like that. Make sure that bar Coach Hannah used a cue the other day that I'm stealing and I'm going to run with. I used to always say the crown of the head. She said, if that bar is not overhead and you can't bring it straight down to your back rack, you're not in position. I done grabbed the PVC pipe and walked in the corner and practiced that bad boy to make sure that it was right. It's a pretty good cue. It puts you that bar right over the heels. So if that bar is not over their shoulders, that if they came straight down and they could back rack it, you know that they're off for it. I've started to steal that with snatch too. When someone's snatching and they're just not really putting it in place, been telling them to put it over their shoulders instead of that crown, and it's been great. So overhead position. If someone is right, it could just be a neurological skill why they're bars out in front. If someone is there and you cue them up and they just do not have the ability to open the shoulder, what's something you could do?
Give them dumbbells.
I could. It depends on the degree. Like if it's bad, dumbbells are definitely a good option. But let's say it's not like the worst in the world. We may be able to correct it on a barbell.
You can widen their hands, right?
Yeah, I can widen their grip out. With widening the grip, it's obviously going to give them more range of motion over top. I just got to make sure now when I come down that my rack position can maintain, right? Because wider hands can make the front rack a little more challenging if that person doesn't have, which I do not, so I got to cheat and use my hand, external rotation. All right, they finished the press. They're overhead. Bars coming down. What are you going to coach? This is like, I don't ever hear it coached, and it stages the next rep beautifully.
That they bring their elbows forward while they come down.
Yes. Yeah, everyone comes down and the elbows just go out because it just feels easy. And then they get to the rack position, elbows are behind the bar. So on the down, get them in front, and then you'll be racked perfectly for the next rep, right? Especially if I'm push pressing or push jerking and I'm moving either some load or speed, the moment that falls and I dip and drive and that thing slips, there goes the castle, right? I've got to make sure that my down is equally as important as my up because my down is what stages the good start for the next up, just like rowing. If I don't bend forward, I miss my catch position totally, and there it goes. There goes my efficiency. Quick tangent. Gina, Jose, I know y'all had Jackie yesterday. On that workout, we have an intern that's with us right now, talked about rowing. And I pointed out someone that was rowing well. They were keeping their heels primarily down. They were turning it into a hinge, right? So his glutes and hamstrings were the main driver of his row. Then on person B, sliding their butt all the way, hip is open the whole time. Main driver became the quads. Deep squat every row stroke. Both of those people came off, grabbed their empty barbell. That should be easy. Should be done, in my opinion, in 2 sets or less for Jackie. The dude with the quads imploded. The dude that rode with good efficiency, not as fit as the dude that rode like shit, smoked him on the barbell. And why was that? Because the movement patterns were where they needed to be, and he used, what's the word, counter muscles in the row in the thruster and was fresher for the barbell. So just quick fun fact tidbit for the day. So when we talk about movement efficiency, if you move like shit, it will bite you in the ass for having a better score and a better load time, whatever it's going to be. All right, our shoulder press, back to that. We've gone through the whole thing. Any thoughts, questions, issues you run into that you're thinking of before we go to the push press? We already talked about it, in my opinion. Everything that I see happen all the time, right? The elbows get lazy. We lose midline stability with the lean back. People don't drive the elbows in front of the bar on the way down and stage it, and they go around the face, right? We kind of already identified each of those.
Something that I think works and even works better for the push press and the press and the push jerk is that by telling them, why it's good to have that rack position is because the barbell is on your body rather than on your arms. Like you're not going to be pressing with your arms, you're going to be pressing with your body.
Oh yeah, definitely teach and explain that, because what do we run into as soon as we put an athlete into front rack? My wrist hurt, right? Why do your wrist hurt? Because most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, there's a lack of effort in driving the elbows up, and the bar is not rested on the shoulder. The bar is in front of the shoulder, and it's pinning that person back. So then they go, I can't front rack because my wrist hurts. And we just need to get them into a better position. There is the case where you've got John that's been bench pressing for 45 years, right? And he is extremely bound up. There, he's all internally rotated, and he's like a big meatball, and he can't front rack at all, right? Yeah, you know that person came in. We all know that guy. That's a person where having the fingers on the barbell and getting the shoulders may be an issue, right? He is probably going to have the barbell floating. It's not even going to be on his shoulder. Work him, have one arm over the bar, and start to have him work back and forth on the barbell, getting it opened up. The other thing I would do is I would take straps, or if you have two like washcloth sized towels and you wrap it around the bar, he can hold the towels and the towels looped around the barbell, and he can start to drive his elbows up in something like a front squat rather than, oh, I'm just not going to do this and I'm going to cross my arms. He's never going to get the ability here. He will slowly get the ability here because I can have him inch down on that strap or on that towel over time until he can get to fingers on the bar. So that's just a good little, like, if I've got somebody like that cannot get into the front rack, a good substitute, or I should say not sub, but a good modification for it. Obviously, that doesn't help the press in our situation because we need full grip and we need to not be pressing a towel over our head. That's a bad idea. Don't do that, please. Go
I have a question.
ahead,
I was
Jose.
just asked about something. I was like, I kind of embarrassed that I don't know this. I was saying to another coach, you always have to know the whys for all the positions and everything. And when you are doing the front rack or whatever, if you're doing the press, why is there? The push press, why is there? And the front squat, he asked me about the front squat, why should it be there? And I'm like, well, that exposes your mobility on the shoulders. But I was like, he was asking me actually about the guy that transitioned from the gym to this other, to CrossFit. That's not gonna convince him. Just mobility is not gonna convince him. And I'm like, okay, I don't really know the biomechanics why in a front squat we should be there.
Honestly, I think you're overthinking what the good answer would be. Yes, it is going to develop shoulder stability, right? And we are going to maintain mobility. And if we want to go down that right, you're not wrong in that, because when I get into my 50s, my 60s, my 70s, I need to maintain mobility. So if I am never trying to get those things open, what is that guy's shoulders going to do? Get tighter and tighter and tighter, and now he's like a decrepit old man that can't reach or move and grab a can out of the cabinet. So you are right when it comes to the flexibility, mobility part of it. It's also going to build stability too, right? He could counter your argument and say, well, if I do this, my core still has to maintain and stay upright, which he would also be right, right? Both you guys. But how the fuck is he going to do a clean later on? I think that's why I said I think you're overthinking it. Like, if he's in CrossFit and he is saying like, this is going to be my program and my methodology. Well, dude, we do power cleans, we do squat cleans, we do all sorts of stuff like that where you're going to be in the rack position. Shoulder press, push jerk, split jerk, all of those things. If he can't ever develop this, then you're telling me that we've got to take all of those movements out of our methodology just because he doesn't want to work hard. Dude, go to High Rocks. Like, I'd like, not to be an ass, but like, you're coming to our gym, so we teach you this methodology that we know is objective, that we know is going to make you fitter, is going to make you healthier, and is going to do it over your entire lifetime, right? Trust us. Yeah, I would just bring it to the clean, because also too, like, what dude doesn't want to clean 300 pounds, or girl? Like, I want to do that. And if he's always here, he needs to get the ability here, because what's going to probably happen is if he never front squats here or never presses here, when he does go to clean, because he's going to want to party and play ball when cleans come up in the programming, right? That's fun. We get to throw heavy weight around. The elbows don't go up at all. He tries to go into a squat clean. They contact the elbow. He breaks his wrist. And now suddenly CrossFit's a bad thing, right? And that's not to say someone that it's only people with bad mobility. I've been to, I think three different Olympic weightlifting meets where these people only do this, and I've seen broken wrists at three of them. One of them being the best person that was going last. Just the elbows didn't get high, they contact, it snaps. So we look at these other movements, especially our 9 foundational movements, they're all going to bleed into another movement later on. So if you pluck one of those simple movements out, it now has this butterfly and ripple effect all the way down the line, right? And we start to lose all these other types of movement as well. And if he also, I would be willing to guess, and you can tell me yes or no on this. If he's so immobile here, he's probably not great up here either, right? It's probably a whole structure thing. So it is not just a movement thing, but it is going to come down to, if I want this guy to have good functionality of life, we got to start to fix that. Sometimes it's bigger than just getting a, see, Isa, than just getting a sweat and workout in, right? Some people want that, and that's great, but they are coming to a CrossFit affiliate, and our job is to educate them to our best of our ability for our methodology, because we love it, because we know it works, right? That's why I love it. Did I answer your question, Jose? In my whole rant? Told you I'm
Oh yeah,
fired up
totally.
after.
I would go with mobility, and for the long term longevity. And I
And
will
it's going to affect all these others. And the all losing all those other movements is going to go circle back around into your mobility and your longevity. So it's all intertied. I just actually had, well, we're kind of on that conversation with a friend of mine. He sent me a podcast, and in the podcast they're talking about, they're bashing CrossFit and saying how bad it failed and yada yada yada. And yeah, CrossFit's not been great on the
Business side,
business
corporate side.
media, like corporate face of this brand side thing, especially with, the tragedy at the games and those things happening. And they were saying, oh yeah, like CrossFit's done, right? And that was their thing. And they're like, High Rocks is
Then the
now,
Ironman's done too.
yeah, I mean, people die in that all the time, but they were like, High
They
Rocks on
died.
the rise.
They died
And
this month. Two of them died doing Ironman.
yeah, and you don't even
Is
hear about it.
Ironman done?
It's just the hot, it's gonna circle back to what I'm about to say. It's just the hot, shiny topic object right now. And their thing was, oh, well, High Rocks is gonna be on the rise now, and that's gonna take over. And I don't know if you guys heard of the hybrid training, how hybrid training is becoming popular. Hybrid training is basically like, if I'm gonna like summarize it in 30 seconds, we're gonna weight lift, we're gonna do weight training, and then we're gonna go run. We're gonna do cardio. So like in a weird, ironic way, they're going back to like what going to the traditional gym was, where we would lift weights and then we would get on an elliptical. It's just they're not getting on ellipticals, they're doing intervals on a track or something like that. It's a little bit more functional. But they were talking about how that's rising.
And you
And
know what? I'm actually writing a paper on it. In hybrid training, they are doing, they're calling it hybrid training hit with high intensity. And I'm like, this is classic CrossFit. This is what it started. It's moving weights at high intensity
it's
with,
CrossFit and they're naming it something different.
it's just that CrossFit now it's let's do weightlifting. Ah, now let's do a Metcon.
I'm
So
gonna throw one more thing in though, that I don't know if you could quote this, but you can go into the level one to do your, what is that shit called? Your documentation, that your research, whatever. You guys know what I mean. I haven't been in college for a long time, so ignore that. Um, right, you have this hybrid training in it, and you have High Rocks. It is like they're ripping CrossFit. What are they missing? Like, let's think about those programs and what are they missing in that program?
the weightlifting, the lifting, the heavy.
High Rocks is definitely missing heavy. I think they caught it, and if you buy their programming, they do have heavy loads, even though that's not. It can be beneficial to stamina, so I don't want to say that, but I think they kind of caught that. What are they still? Okay, variance is a part of this. What
More
don't you
functional
see?
movements.
I mean, they're moving functionally, right? They're squatting, they're
They are,
deadlifting.
but they could do more.
They're missing a glaring massive gap of neurological work. Nothing they do in any of their training is remotely complex. And my point in that is it doesn't need to be these overly complex, like the fucking, I don't even know what are the swinging dips I was doing in my stories. It doesn't need to be that complex, right? But if we're missing the balance, agility, accuracy, and coordination in our training, and we never do that, remember back when I talked about the 85-year-old snatching a PVC pipe? And what am I not worried about him doing? I'm not worried about him losing his balance and tripping and falling. And if he doesn't do that, he doesn't go to the nursing home and he maintains quality of life. They're missing that part of it because they're going to this shiny object of this dude strong with a six pack like Nick Bare. And Nick Bare is definitely on performance enhancing drugs, but we're also not going to talk about that because that's not the cool thing. right? So when you look at these programs, you really have to, and Glassman did a good job at this. You really have to like, let's make it objective. Can we prove in those some of those programs that people are getting fitter? Absolutely. They've got that down. But do they have the 3D model and can they prove CrossFit can prove it now? We've got enough sample sizes and data that this is going to work into their 80s and 90s. We'll see a 90-year-old doing CrossFit. Are we going to see a 90-year-old doing high rocks? I would lean toward maybe, maybe not. We don't know totally. So those
There's
neurological
more
elements,
longevity in CrossFit
I think
than
there's
there
more
is in high rocks.
longevity and it's more scalable across the entire thing. Versus if
Yeah.
you can't go run 8,000 meters, yeah, you can go get it done, but you're gonna have to walk 8,000 meters, right? So it's just more it's more scalable for the masses as well. Anyway, total side rant. I hope all that made sense. That was like a hot topic last night with a friend, so it's like fresh on my mind. Let's go push press. Nothing changes, right? Everything we talked about, the shoulder press, is gonna stay the same. What does change? The dip and drive, right? For the dip and drive, give me some things that you might teach or you might look out for on that. Like if you're gonna introduce that to a class.
Knee position.
Knee position is a big one, right? I think a lot of times, like, I've gone back and forth from saying we initiate at the knees, and I've gone to where I don't say initiate at the knees. And honestly, I don't know what I like or I don't like in that. I think it's one of those things is what works for you, and use it. But knee position, right? Everyone loves to dip and drive, and knees go straight forward and they get pulled into their toes rather than they get pushed out and they get into that like more of a V shape on that. So I love knee position. That's also going to help engage our glutes and we get more posterior chain engagement, which means more power. So it also means more ability to drive that bar off the shoulder. So knee position is definitely one. One of you did torso. Yeah. Then the torso is definitely a big one too. If you are watching an athlete do their dip and drives, where's the best place to stand to be able to tell if they are leaning forward?
Side.
On the
Can
side lateral.
be pretty good. Yeah, I would say profile's pretty damn good. Anything that you can see their back, I would say. Because if you watch their shoulder blades in relation to their hips, they don't lie. The slightest deviation, you'll see it. Versus like you can stand in front with like a 45-degree textbook angle and it looks like they're vertical, but they're actually slightly tilting. So that's always a good spot to stand on that. Obviously going through the progression, dip, hold, dip, drive, slow. You introduce it slow on that. What's a good drill you guys can use if you're just like, not today, we're gonna avoid this problem before it starts, or you're having someone that just cannot get it down and their butt's going back and their chest is going forward. What's a good drill?
I put them against the wall.
Yeah, throw them on the wall. Throw them on the wall, throw them on the rig. Shoulder blades never leave the wall with it, right? I have people usually dip and hold for me, and then I do exactly what Cayman does, and I'll adjust where I want their knees and things like that. What's another thing that the wall will prevent besides leaning forward? A little trickier that we don't think of, but it is an accidental, like, good thing. A muted hip. If I have a muted hip, that means I broke the knees. My hip never flexed. So instead of my torso going forward, my torso goes backwards. And you get these people that lean back when they do their dip and drive, and the knees are flexing, but the hip doesn't flex. The hip is flexing just slightly and going straight down, not back. And that's why the torso can stay tall. That's also why if I dip too deep, I have to shoot my butt back eventually because my hip cannot continue to go up and down in a straight line. Does that make sense? So sometimes you've got the majority of people are leaning forward, and then sometimes you got the opposite, where that guy's leaning backwards because he's only dipping their knee. Now, if it's a really heavy load, you don't see it very often for obvious reasons. It's going to push them. But you see it on like those workouts that it's maybe 95 pounds and it's someone like me that has a good press, that's where it can kind of get lost and we just lose all of that posterior chain engagement and hip drive basically. So look for both of those angles happening.
So butt and shoulders should always be touching the wall.
Butt and shoulders. Yeah. The wall prevents them from leaning back, obviously. Right? They can't, the wall's in the way. But yeah, butt and shoulders are one straight. You can imagine those are one straight line, and those need to move vertically together always. And they're gonna be always stacked up because we got that barbell stacked up. Questions, thoughts on the push press? Sick. Let's go push jerk. We're kind of finishing push jerk and push press and the push jerk. So obviously we have a timing piece on the push press. Let's finish with that. I should have moved on yet. What's a good drill to get people to understand the timing, right? Because I need the extension to happen before that press goes, which is one of the hardest things, right? It's a core to extremity violation. I would say 9 out of 10 people in class that we have a barbell movement are violating core to extremity. What's a good drill for that? Specifically the push press.
Squeeze your butt, then press.
Yeah. I would
I
say
mean,
it's
I guess
good
that's a
key.
cue. That's not a
Yeah.
drill.
Good cue. If you take, go ahead.
I was gonna say have them dip and drive and kind of with that drive up. I don't even know how to say this. I haven't done this in a while, but you drive so hard that the barbell kind of floats up.
Yeah, and you don't press.
Right.
Right? So I do that with my classes sometimes, right? When we're doing our full push press progression, right? Barbell's there, dip hold, dip drive slow, dip drive fast, dip drive faster. I love to get more animated because when you start to scream faster, for some reason, the louder your voice goes, the faster people start to go too. But before it starts to pop off, I always tell them, go ahead and get your chin out of the way. Don't press it. And I want you to drive so that bar launches off the shoulders, right? And it gives them, and it's only going to float maybe like to the chin level, to their nose at most. And it's going to give them the feel of what that extension feels like, right? And then if they can time it right with the punch, they'll look at you like you were crazy because they're like, that was so easy, right? And it's just because their chain was broken and they were pressing early before that drive happened. For that drive to be maximized, core has to be tight. So you can also, besides timing, make sure that people are rigid, because if they're soft in here, right, and I take a big tube of Jello and I put it on your chest and I punch the Jello, it's just going to reverberate a little bit and you may have felt it, but nothing's going to happen. Versus if I took a textbook and put the textbook on your chest and I punched the textbook, you immediately get pushed, right? It's a solid structure, so energy is transferring good. It's the same thing when we dip and drive for a push press or a push jerk or a split jerk. I need tension, so the drive and the power that's coming out of my legs and hips transfers through into that barbell, right? That's also a really common thing I see. People just don't have the tension and they kind of like bow and then they press. And that bow and lean back is a good indicator for you that they weren't rigid. So you can get them tensed down, and that will also make it a much easier rep. Going into our push jerk. Now we're having our dip and drive, and then we're getting under the bar. When people start to think of their landing and getting under, they a lot of times cut their extension and their drive, right? So you've got to look out for that person that might have been perfect on a push press extension, making sure that they're passing through that same range and same triple extension point to then get short. So like the way I'll cue that is I put a big emphasis on, hey, let's get as tall aggressively as possible and then get short as fast as possible. Make sure they have that let's get tall first in their head before getting down there. Right. And then obviously here's where some mobility is going to come into play even more so, because I need ankle, hip, and shoulder to come into play because it is a baby overhead squat that we're landing in, right? Obviously, all the faults, all of the points of performance are going to flow into this push jerk. What are some new things I need to look out for? It's going to be related to the land because that's what's the new part of this.
Going under rather than back.
Yeah, that's I would say if there was one that was my number one, it's that, right? Making sure the hip stays with the spine and the butt goes back rather than the hip chasing the legs and it kind of like tucks under and it becomes that muted hip. A lot of people muted hip, right? Landing with those legs back makes your legs activate more, and it does feel a little harder as far as muscular fatigue goes if you're not used to it. So making sure the hip gets back in the landing. What's another thing? I go to the
That they
feet.
land. Yeah, that
The
they land
landing
to
with the
spread
feet.
out.
Yeah, making sure one, they're landing in their squat stance. That's where they should be for this movement, because if they do need to get depth, they have the ability in the hips and the stance to get depth in the landing as that load increases. And then also, are they landing flat? Right? I've got a barbell overhead. So any kind of miss in accuracy or a miss in balance is not going to go well, right? Push jerks are great, by the way. Push jerks, we talked about the neurological stuff. Push jerk is a beautiful example of balance, accuracy, agility, and coordination. There are so many changes of direction and movement and balance factor that's coming into it. It has all of them. So yeah, look at the feet, right? Good foundation is going to build a good house. Like if the feet are off, the rest of the lift's probably off. If you watch somebody do a push jerk and everything's going good, they're hitting hip extension, their butt's back, they're landing flat-footed, all of these things are happening. They're putting the bar in place in the frontal plane where it needs to go, and every push jerk they land, they're like, what's going wrong? So they're like that used car
midline.
salesman. Yeah. The
What did he say?
midline.
Yeah.
Midline. Yeah, just core tension, right? If I've got any movement in here, it's going to get exacerbated and move more overhead. So all our overhead lifts, including the overhead squat and the snatch, if I do not have my core braced and everything from my neck all the way to my hips, if that's not silent, I'm going to have movement and I'm going to be always playing and fighting the balance game, right? So we look at this functional movement, the core has to do its job at the core of the core's job, right? And that is resist movement. So if you ever see somebody waving and they're moving great, just make sure they get tight there. All of a sudden you'll notice they'll silence out and it's like, oh, look at that. Like that felt good finally. Any thoughts, pain points on the push jerk?
I have a question. I mean, I know I've asked you this before, but so you go tall before being short. If they don't get that, then I'm focusing on them jumping high before they get low. But when you tell them to jump high, it becomes much slower.
Well, and
Is that
it's a jump, but it's technically, we don't want to jump high, right? I don't want my feet being way off the ground. So it's a jump hard, not high. But that's tricky. That's hard. Like we may understand that. That's hard for a member to understand. So if you're trying to get someone to hit that extension, think of it. What's another way you can do that without saying like, hey, jump high?
I mean, a tactile cue?
Yeah, go to a tactile. Stand behind them and give them the target of your hand. Don't punch
So
until you hit my hand.
So I shouldn't tell them to jump high so they feel like there's like jump high, squeeze your glutes so they can feel the extension.
I'm not saying not to say that. If that works, great. But we also don't want the person to like walk away from that going, every time I do a push jerk, I need to jump 6 inches off the ground, right? Like it can be a great drill. And I'm going to give you a good example of this. I have had people jump intentionally on purpose
Yeah, like
so they
in a
can
pull-
feel
yeah.
what it feels like. But how I normally do that is I don't have them do that on the barbell. I actually
Yeah.
have them, I just take a PVC pipe and I
Yeah.
dangle it like way overhead. And I'm like,
Okay.
jump and touch that.
Yeah.
And I put it at a height that like they're gonna have to jump to get to. And then I'm like, okay, we're gonna do it one more time. What I want you to notice is how you've squeezed your legs in your butt when you've extended to try to touch. And I have them do it again so they can put that together. And hey, we need that leg and butt squeeze on this lift. Does that make sense? So the jump can be a really, really good teaching tool to understand of what opening that hip and opening those knees are. I would just be careful that they don't take that and try to literally jump high. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I guess that was my worry, that when they get the barbell, they're gonna try to jump really high and it's not gonna like
Yeah,
make
that's why I
sense.
went like I do, and I don't do it that much, but when I do it, that's why I do it like with no bar. I have them literally just jump. Some coaches I've seen take people to boxes. I don't like the box personally, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it becomes more of a mental game. Am I going to land on this box or am I going to miss the box jump? Or you get the people that have really bad box jump habits and they kind of half extend and then they just pull their legs up fast to land on it. And did that teach them what I was trying to teach them? No. It just taught them to use their hip flexors to get their knees high so they landed on the box. Right. So, like, I don't love the box as a drill. I just have them do like the basketball test when they jump and they got to hit as high as they can.
Yeah.
Basically, have them do a jump like that to understand it. So I don't dislike a jump. Just be careful of them getting it confused on a barbell.
Mhm.
But yeah, tactile cue. I think coaches should use more of those when it comes to timing and early pulls. I think it's a good drill, and we just don't use it as much as we should, I think. That being said, probably one of the hardest things to see real time.
Yeah.
Like you've got to be really locked in. Those eyes have got to be into that hip region because we're trying to make sure that we've got no break here before that's happening. If I've got any break there on a clean or snatch or anything like that, then it's there on a push press or a push jerk. I pretty much still lock in to like that hip region, and I like try to peripherally watch that barbell go. And then sometimes you can kind of just take your eyes up there if you need to watch that a little closer, and that'll help. But it's one of those movement faults that if you're not looking for, unless it is so egregious, you won't see, right? We see the egregious ones, those people that are like, they look like a scarecrow. Like, that's a different case. Everyone sees that one. But look for those core to extremity faults.
I have a
But
question.
I got one more statement and then your question.
Okay.
Don't forget your question. The last thing I'll say is if you're looking at something like that and you're going, I think I see it, you see it. Trust your think. When it becomes clear, you'll be like, oh, for sure you were. So if you think you see it, you do see it. Trust me on that one. What's your question?
It's on where to stand exactly when somebody's moving. Do you
Elaborate on that.
stand
Like, what do you mean?
do you stand right in front of them or do you stand like in front but like to the side a little bit? Like
Yeah, I
let's
always say side.
say, huh?
I don't want to stare in some. I don't want to be like staring in someone's
Right.
eyes.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure that I was right.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you.
Because
I've been
that
spit
also
on.
came in the L3. That simple little thing came in the
Yeah, that's
L3.
so funny.
I've been. Besides the fact that it's like kind of awkward, like standing directly in front of somebody's weird. Because like, imagine, especially a guy to a girl. Imagine someone squatting and I stand right in front of them and they squat and where's their face? Right in my crotch. That's fucking uncomfortable for me and them,
Oh,
right?
that happened to me actually
It did happen to
with
you.
Bergner.
That funny story. That happened to Deanna with Mike Bergner at the CrossFit Games. He just happened to stop right where she was standing and like was teaching
Literally,
while she was
it
in
was
an
like
overhead squat.
this. It was like this. And
Yeah. Oh,
his crotch was right in front of me, and I had no idea where to look, man. That was so embarrassing.
great example. One of the best coaches in the world. Great example of that was, and we got it on video. We got picture and all. Right. So I think that was just an awareness thing. But like besides it being awkward, I've been spit on. I've had, not on purpose, obviously. I've had sweat just absolutely coat me. God knows what else I've gotten on me and not known it. Like, just for those factors, standing right in front of somebody's probably a bad idea. I don't want spit on my face. I don't want sweat on my face. Yeah, get to the side, make them comfortable. They talk about it in level one, even like when they
I
talk
know,
about
yeah.
spotting the dip. You're to the side and you're even conscious about where you're putting your hands in case it's a female. You don't want them coming down onto your hand. So it's like being aware of people's personal space and comfort as well as yours. Like you're still a human being too. Like you need to be aware of that. I know if a coach stands in front of me, like I will probably just bluntly tell them to move. Because also I don't want to miss my lift and crack your head open. Like it's also a safety concern. So yeah, if you're gonna be there tactiling somebody, be to the side and be in a position that if you are tactiling somebody, that you can get the fuck out of the way if they have to bail too, right? You don't want to compromise yourself under a barbell, they bail and the barbell land on you. Also be careful that if you're tactiling and that barbell is going up, that your hand's not over the bar. Make sure you're on the backside so the bar's not going to hit you. Just shit like that.
Well, I mean, like in general, not only like the tactile cue. I mean, like if you're cueing somebody,
The only time, there is one time that I am going to stand in front of you on purpose if I'm cueing you, and that's when I'm giving you a visual cue. I'm not looking at you in the eyes, but I'm just in front of you. So if you're moving, you don't have to turn to look at me. I'm right there and I'm going to, hey, this is what you're doing. I'm going to give my bad. This is what I need you to do. I'm going to give my good. And then I'm going to get the fuck out of the way. I'm not going to stay there because I also
okay,
need to
yeah, yeah,
position
yeah.
myself now to look back and check the cue and see if it just worked or not. That's the
Also
only
look for
time I'm getting in front of somebody like that.
I look for feedback too of the client because there's clients that are super competitive
100%.
or very inattentive, and I'm trying to talk to them and give them something. They're looking across the room at so and so or the clock, and I have to reposition yourself and repeat.
100%. Yeah, and what I would say is how many this may or may not have happened to you, but it happens to me all the time. And like I'll scream a cue at somebody and they'll glance at me and they keep going and it doesn't work. And then I got to go over there and I visual cue them or I tactile cue them. And then after the workout, they go and they're just, they have WOD brain. They go, "What were you telling me?" Right? And I'm like, "Oh, we got it because I gave you the visual and I gave you the tactile, but I was verbally telling you at first, but if it didn't work." And even though they looked at me, all they heard was Jose. That's it. That's all he got. So he knew I was talking to him, but he didn't get the cue of it. So that it's good that you're very aware of like what they're looking at and thinking because there's going to be times where that person is looking at who they're trying to beat and they're not paying attention to you and they didn't hear something and you do have to reposition yourself. Yeah, but I would say like this is me personally. Just even if I'm in a conversation with somebody, those people that just don't have good spatial awareness and they stand right in front of you and they take that little bit baby step and they need to be close to you when they talk and you kind of step back and they don't get it and they step forward and then you're now playing this game where you're moving across the room, right? Like think about it, it's uncomfortable in just a combo. So if you're coaching or teaching, it's not a good place to be, right? Be somewhere where they can see you when they need to see you, but give them personal space as well. Does that answer your question, D?
Yeah, yeah. I just want to make sure that I didn't forget.
Yeah, it's not. Most of the time, I'm going to be at 45. Occasionally, I'm going to go to different angles to see different things. When I am going to different angles, I'm looking for specific different things. Um, yeah, and then I am gonna be conscious of just someone's personal space. I also am very I ask for permission on things. Like we did freestanding
Yeah.
handstands today, and I had someone I was like, "Hey, can you be my demo? This is what I'm gonna do." That person said yes to me, so then I demoed, and then every person that was wanting to do it, I was like, "Are you okay with me spotting you and touching your leg?" Because some people aren't, and take if you ask and they're just even like, nah, don't. Like, it's not worth it. Don't make them uncomfortable, right? And it's also, if someone else is uncomfortable, I'm uncomfortable, and that's a whole snowball effect too. And like, take notice in what people do, right? We had a girl at 6 a.m. that wanted to do it. She went to another female to ask her, even though that girl wasn't a coach. I need to recognize that she purposefully probably went to a female so I didn't have to touch her leg. So I'm not going to step in and be like, oh, let me do it. No, like those little social cues, try to pick up on those too. And what I did is I just oversaw the one girl, the member, spot the other girl, and I walked them through verbally just to make sure that it went well. So just things like that too. Like, don't be overbearing. If someone's ever just like, dude, that's a no. Like, move on. That's okay. Maybe next time, you know? So that's stuff that I think is not talked about a lot and enough. Like, we're all still human. We all still have lines of comfort laid in the sand all over the place. You know, listen to them when people say it. Because then
I got a
So,
question.
if you don't, you're now their least favorite coach.
Yeah.
Cayman and then D.
Going back to push press and push jerk, could you all share some different exercises to strengthen the core and back muscles for when people get wobbly? And we talked about not having a strong, tight midsection, but if they are flexing, if they are bracing, and they're still getting wobbly because the weight's so high, what are some exercises y'all recommend?
Anybody
Superman.
want to lead that off? Yeah, Superman can work. What else? What's that? What's Superman's sister?
The
Hello.
Hollow hold. I don't know if that's a real saying, by the way, so don't go around saying Superman's sister. Unless you want to. Yeah, hollow holds. Hollow holds, I think, are some of my favorite because we can actually learn how to brace the core. Sometimes it's not like someone has a super weak core, they just don't know how to neurologically get it activated. So that can be something that you may have to help them figure out as well. Like tactile cues, like I definitely always say I'm going to poke your stomach, but like, hey, take a breath in, be ready for me to poke your stomach, and like teach them that. Sometimes I've had to have someone lay on the floor and take a very light kettlebell, put it on their lower abdomen, and find hollows to where they fought and pushed the kettlebell with their muscles so the kettlebell didn't feel like it was squishing their organs. I've had to do that with people to just teach them how to get it activated. So your job is to figure out, are they getting activated? Because that could be a no, and that may be the problem. And then if okay, they are, it's just they are really weak, then Superman, hollow hold, we had the big three that we talked about. Of course, like GHD, if they're that weak, then I would only do holds. I would never have them do sit-ups until it built up. Um, Front rack holds,
Even overhead.
farmers carry, overhead carries, things like that are all going to
The
be really good
complaint that I
too.
got from one of my clients this week, he was saying that it's more of like a crunch feeling. So like coming down on the spine, and I was touching him, and like he felt like he had pretty good brace, and he's a strong athlete too. So I don't know, like he has those skills. So
And it was
looked at his positioning, and he seemed to be pretty good. So I don't know,
and it was like painful.
a little bit. He's like it's uncomfortable. I feel like if I keep moving up, he was saying it's gonna like I'm gonna hurt my spine or something.
I start to think of that he may have been hyperextended.
Okay, what it explain?
That's so like Instagram butt, right?
Okay.
If I'm gonna take a picture of my butt on Instagram, I'm gonna flex my spine and push it out to make it look bigger, right? You definitely see it more happen with like female, just because some girls want to make the butt look big and they try to walk around like that more often, and that's just they get really good practice in that position accidentally. I have a girl right now that's like badly suffering from that, and it's the same. She described it the same way, that she feels like her back is getting like smashed. And I had her just do hollow and back racks. And I was like, I need you to squeeze your butt and then make your abs tight. So she got into more of a stacked
Mm.
position. And her response was, that feels better. So for her, she was just really hyperextending. He may be hyperextending, not to that degree, but even slightly, if we have a slight hyperextension and we put 200 pounds on the back, there's a good chance we probably feel that versus in an air squat or something like an empty barbell, we may not feel it if it's just really slight. Your counter to that is, hey, try to keep those ribs down. We need the tension to help make sure that we're not. So try to play and figure out if he's hyperextending some. If you want to take some videos, take it. Because sometimes it's not super glaring. Sometimes it is very slight and it's hard to tell for movement.
And he wears, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, a big pump cover shirt too. So I can't even see. It's difficult to
Oh,
see.
so yeah, it's real baggy and shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm willing to bet he's probably got a little hyperextension going. It happens sometimes, especially in squats when you're teaching, hey, butt back and down. It's really a slight hip hinge and then down. Some people don't hip hinge and they just arch and the butt goes back because they've arched and then they go down. That's what we have to be careful with because then you will feel that compression. Yeah, I don't, from what you tell me, it doesn't sound like a weakness thing. I think he might be just out of position. D, what were you gonna ask?
It's okay. It's fine.
Done. Okay.
I was gonna ask something about the push press.
Go ahead, Gina.
We had push presses yesterday, and like I drilled them the whole time. Like squeeze your butt, don't let your legs help you, don't re-dip. I said it every way I could think of, and then later on Instagram, I'm like, what the hell's that? A push jerk?
The
And I
fuck.
completely missed this one guy's push jerk, and I'm like, dude. So
Yeah,
what would you
definitely.
say were tactile to you? I don't know like where to touch them.
So I have a guy that literally fits exactly what you're saying. Um, Part of it for him, I think, is he's just gotten really invested on moving the barbell better. So for the first time in his CrossFit career, he's been CrossFitting I think 2 or 3 years. He's actually trying to like get mechanics right, and he's invested in it. That guy, empty barbell all the way through, push jerks everything. So for him, like I had to literally pull him off the bar because he just couldn't put it together. And I would say, dip, squeeze your butt in your legs, and just make him feel kind of like what D's jumping thing was. Just really make him feel what it feels like to have the quad squeeze and to have the butt squeeze. And then I'm like, okay, when you get on this barbell, I need you to find that same feeling after the first one and try to like take that piece and put it with it. That helped me a lot with this guy I have. And then the other thing and the other thought I have with this is he's now gotten to a point where if I say push press, he's going to push press good, good, good. And then he wants to get heavy. And there is a line to where he starts to lose the ability to actually push press and he reverts to jerk. So I have to sometimes be like, hey, like take 5 pounds off, you're doing it again. And I have to almost bring him back down to earth and then like re-wave him up. So occasionally that can be really beneficial just because the load may be getting to a point where that person does need to actually dip and like for efficiency and to make the movement complete, like they need that help. So sometimes taking a hair of a load off the bar can be really helpful with them actually getting the finish of that push press too. But yeah, get people, it's crazy to say for us, it's not a thing, but there is people that do not understand how to flex their quad and squeeze that thing. And you like have to show them. And sometimes like you just need to get someone to feel something before it works. But yeah, I'm with you on that. I've had members that you're like, stand straight up, don't rebend the knees, don't rebend the hip, and they just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And now you have to bring them down to just a base sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's what it is because I even commented on it like, hey, that's a push jerk. And he goes, the first one too. I'm like, yeah, both of them. Like,
You pretty much just took the next words out of my mouth. Sometimes people just need to see a push press and need to see a push jerk and what the difference
a
is.
demo of that.
Sometimes in like that one demo,
Mhm.
who knows? Like the guy's cat may have been throwing up on him this morning. Like you don't know where his head was, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes they just need to see it again because they don't realize what the total difference is. They hear push, they're not CrossFit nerds like us, and they don't really realize that there is a difference between the two. I've had people do that where I have to go, hey, this is a push press, and I'm like, only watch my legs. And then I'm like, okay, this is a push jerk. Watch what my knees do now. And they're like, oh, I've had
Yeah.
that a million times. So sometimes you do also just have to mimic it or
Right, a
like
little
mimic
bit.
it and continue to show them because they just don't have like they don't have the, okay, those are two different things.
So not necessarily like a tactile cue, but kind of take the
Yeah.
load off and just get them to feel it without.
Yeah, and if you show them a push press versus a push jerk also, like that's a visual cue. Hey, you're doing this, watch my knees. I need you to do this with your knees. Most of the time it's knees, I think. It's not really always hips. It's like that.
Yeah.
Was it one of those like soft rebuckles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most annoying in the world because it's like they almost got it, but they didn't. They still did a
Yeah.
shitty push jerk.
We'll see.
All right, guys, it's 12:07. I don't want to hold y'all all day. We didn't quite get to the split jerk like I wanted to partly because of me and my rants. We'll save the split jerk. We will, if you guys happen to do any, maybe I'll do some in training this week before Thursday. Get a video, or if you guys do have that in your programming. If I've got some videos, we'll talk split jerk and then we'll watch them Thursday. If I don't have any split jerks, which don't overstress it, we'll talk about the split jerk next Tuesday, and then I'll definitely try to get some videos for the following Thursday call because I know for a fact I'll be able to get some we're kind of introducing it in our weightlifting class, so I'll have something for y'all. That being said, I will see you guys on Thursday.
Bye.
See y'all. Have a good couple days.